Hello, welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Kate Harper of the 61st District in Montgomery County. April 2011 was the 150th anniversary of the start of the Civil War, and we are quickly approaching the anniversary of the battle that was considered to be the turning point in that war and eventually solidified our country as a truly united states. Thousands of people will descend on the small town of Gettysburg this July to remember the sacrifice of so many. You may choose to join them for the special events planned for the summer, but if you don't like crowds, there are many unique opportunities in the months leading up to the anniversary and this year that you can take advantage of. Here to tell us about all the exciting plans is James Vaughn, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. Mr. Vaughn, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself? I noticed from your resume that you've kind of been on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line in your career. Where have you been as Executive Director?
I came here from the National Trust for Historic Preservation in Washington, D.C., where I served as Vice President for 11 years. Before that, I was the Director of the Hermitage, Andrew Jackson's home in Nashville on the south side of the Mason-Dixon line. And prior to that, I was Director of San Diego Historical Society, the Hagley Museum and Library in Delaware, and Strawberry Bank up in New Hampshire. So I've been around.
You've been around. You know a lot about American history. What's Pennsylvania doing to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Gettysburg and in general the Civil War?
Well, there's a lot going on, and I should start by saying that we have a statewide Civil War 150 team, and we're partnering with the Historical Society of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia and with the Heinz History Center in Pittsburgh, and those three organizations and lots of smaller partners have a wide range of activities planned for this year.
Give me some examples.
Well, the first I'll hold up, which is we just published this book, which is a lot of photographs from around Pennsylvania during the Civil War. Most of them had never been published before. So.
And how did you compile them? Where's that? The Civil War in Pennsylvania. And before I go any further, where can people get this book? We have so many Civil War buffs.
You can get it online, or you can get it from our bookstore at the State Museum.
Great. All right, so the first thing you did was you published this book, which looks great. I'm going to get myself a copy. But tell me about things people can participate in.
Okay. This January at the State Museum, we opened an exhibit of the Emancipation Proclamation. We had one of the Lincoln signed copies. It was there for a month. The exhibit's still up, but we now have a digital reproduction of the Emancipation Proclamation because it had to go back into its vault in
naturally.
Philadelphia.
I think with the popularity of the movie Lincoln, a lot of people are focused on the Emancipation Proclamation and the significance of that to our history as a people.
Yes, yeah, it would, and you can see that exhibit at the State Museum. It will be running for a couple more months.
Okay, and the State Museum, for those who don't know it, is right next to the Capitol here in Harrisburg.
Absolutely. We also have an exhibit that was prepared by the Heinz History Center on the Civil War in Pennsylvania that has been traveling for the last year to various venues, and you can check the Heinz History Center website for its location, but primarily in western Pennsylvania at historical societies this year. We also are publishing a second book, which we hope will be out in April or May, on the African American experience in Pennsylvania during the Civil War. And
let me ask you, will that book cover any of the Quaker activities? We have a lot of Quakers in my district, and we have several places of historical significance to the Underground Railroad. So I don't know if you covered that or if you basically covered the military side of things. The book covers the African American experience, and it's written by a number of different authors, and so they're each taking a slightly different slant on or component of the African American experience in Pennsylvania. However, there is an exhibit opening at the Heinz History Center in the fall on the Underground Railroad, and that exhibit will run through next year, and it's a pretty good size exhibit, so you might want to put that on your calendars. And I think the other thing I should mention is last year and the year before we had a road show on the Civil War that traveled throughout the state
And this year, the contents of that roadshow will be at the Pennsylvania State Museum. It will open in September, and that again is about the Civil War on the home front in Pennsylvania.
All right. What do you think people should look for if they're interested in this topic and they want to see one of these exhibits? What particularly grabs a viewer when they take a look at these things?
I think the probably the most popular thing in our roadshow, and will be reinstalled in the museum, was an opportunity for people to read stories of real people during the Civil War, and then they have a chance to record their own story. If they have a story in their family of a great uncle or a great great grandfather who participated in the Civil War, so they've had a chance to, in a sense, contribute that story into the archives of the State Museum.
Well, what do you think the significance of the Battle of Gettysburg was? Because this 4th of July weekend, if you will, I know thousands of people will be in Gettysburg for that. But, you know, as a historian, how do you see the Battle of Gettysburg?
Well, we've used the tagline for Gettysburg, "Where it was decided," because I think most historians would say it was the critical battle of the Civil War. Obviously, the war went on for almost 2 years after Gettysburg, but it was the one effort of the South to penetrate into Northern Territory. It was probably the most dramatic open field battle of the war. It certainly has been the most studied battle of the war, and thanks in large part to the National Park Service, large portions of the battlefield have been protected. And that's not always the case with some of our Civil War battlefield locations. So I was there just last Monday. One of the changes that people will see is that in the 1960s, the National Park Service built a visitor center and a cyclorama. They had that big
So I
circular
do remember
painting.
that. And the map with the little buttons on it,
Yep.
the army's moving here and there.
Well, a couple of years ago, they built a new visitor center, and they intentionally built it at a more remote location because that old visitor center was right in the middle of the battlefield.
Right in the way.
Right in the
people
way.
who were trying to picture it, what it was really like.
Exactly. And there was a lot, I would say a decade of debate about, some people wanted to save the building because it was done by a noted architect, and some people wanted to save the battlefield. So it was an unusual fight in which there were preservationists on both sides. And in the end, the National Park Service determined that it was more important to preserve the battlefield than to preserve this particular work of architecture. So that building is being taken down now, and by this summer, the battlefield will be restored to its appearance.
So if people want to go and see the Gettysburg battlefield, they don't have to try to squeeze in there with everybody else on the 4th of July weekend. They can go anytime, right?
Well, I think that's one of the joys of living in Pennsylvania, is that it's there, and it's a beautiful place to visit. I've been there a number of times, and I think the times I've enjoyed it the most are the times when it's been relatively quiet. So often spring and fall are more peaceful times to visit than in summer.
Plus, it must have been blazing hot then, because it usually is in the middle of July in Pennsylvania.
It is, and there is something there's something powerful about being there in the same season that the battle took place. You don't have to do quite so much imagining, but I think this year it's going to be quite crowded. I would guess for most of June and July.
Right, because many people are taken by that battle and the Civil War in general. In Montgomery County, I know, and in Bucks County, our neighbors, we have Civil War roundtables. People just who are interested in the war sit around and talk about it. And I don't know why it captures our imagination, but I do think it was a defining moment in America's history. What do you think?
Well, we do sit around and talk about it. I think the studying of the tactics, the study of leadership, the study of the various roles of the generals there, you can approach the story of that battle from so many different perspectives. And it was known at the time that it was a turning point. At the State Museum, we are presently reinstalling what we consider to be our standing exhibit about Gettysburg, which is around a giant painting of Pickett's Charge.
Ah, I'm familiar. We have one right here in the building.
Yes. And that painting was commissioned 2 years after the battle, and the artist interviewed people that had participated in the battle. So it's considered to be one of the most accurate renditions of the actual scene. Although it may not surprise you to know that there are a few individuals who were painted into the picture that actually were never there.
Really?
Yeah.
Who were they, the artist's friends?
I think they were some local politicians.
Oh, well, yes, we have a place of popping up.
Yeah.
Have a point of popping up in places where we're not always expected. I have to tell you, though, I find that painting itself fascinating because of the chaos it depicts. The smoke, the guns, the blood, the people falling this way and that, you know, it's, and I guess the battle was similar to that.
Yes, I think the picture is very powerful because it depicts the agony of war as well as the courage of war.
Right.
So you stand there and look at that painting and you can really begin to think what it must have been like on the battlefield. Now, we're fortunate. The State Museum really got its start when a number of gifts were acquired after the Battle of Gettysburg. So we had gifts of ordnance that were picked up on the field. We have some medals that were awarded after the battle, and you might recall in that painting there's a drummer.
Yes.
In the foreground. We have that drum, the one that's in the painting.
The actual drum.
The actual drum. So there's a number of pieces in our collection that are actually depicted in the painting.
And you have the original, I guess.
We have the original.
Here in the Capitol, we have a copy.
Yes, yes. When the State Museum was built, there was a space, because it's quite a large painting, there was a space specifically constructed to hold that painting. So it was almost a case of the museum being built around the painting.
Well, what exactly does the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission do? I mean, Pennsylvania is so rich in history, dating back from basically from the founding of the state and William Penn all the way up to the present. What exactly does your commission do? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, let me start with what we do overall. We have 5 bureaus, and one of those is our Bureau of Historic Sites and Museums, and we operate a number of museums and historic house museums around the state, including, I suppose, the best known would be the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg.
Oh, very popular. Yes.
But the Lumber Museum, the Anthracite Museum, Drake's Well, the flag
Oil was discovered.
where oil was discovered, the flagship Niagara, which is also celebrating an important anniversary this year. That's probably what we're best known for. We also have the Bureau of the State Museum, and we have the State Archives, the State Records Center, and we are the Bureau of Historic Preservation, which is the statewide preservation operation of Pennsylvania. So it's a pretty diverse collection of responsibilities. It's a lot of fun. We have about 5 million objects in our collection, in our history and archaeology collections. We also, people forget that we're also the official natural history depository of the state. So we have collections of bugs and leaves and animals that go way beyond what people think of when they think of the State Museum.
I bet they do. So hang on to that thought. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Legislative Report will focus on what we're doing in Pennsylvania this year for the 150th anniversary of the Civil War and what we do every day at the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission. Thanks for being with us.
Did you know that Act 16 of 1999 honors one of the greatest leaders in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives? The Matthew J. Ryan Legislative Office Building, once known as the Capitol Annex, is located next to the main Capitol building and honors the late Speaker of the House, Matthew J. Ryan. Those who visit this building will observe the magnificent architectural designs providing eloquence and grandeur to the building. Known as one of the greatest members in the history of the Pennsylvania State House, Matthew Ryan started his career in the legislature in 1963 and was elected Speaker in 1981. His charisma and knowledge will forever be reflected in the building now named after this great legislative leader. Now you know.
Did you know that the state capitol is not only the epicenter of the Commonwealth's governing bodies, but was once home to 390 preserved Civil War flags? During the war, it was customary for each state to furnish their regiments in battle with flags representing their contribution to the Union Army. After the war, Pennsylvania's military department was responsible for collecting the flags, and in 1872 they were reverently housed in the Capitol. Following the completion of construction on the new Capitol building in 1914, the Civil War flags were removed to the Capitol Rotunda. They were kept untouched in custom-made flag cases until 1982, when the Capitol Preservation Committee initiated its Save the Flags project. Throughout the years, dust and long-term vertical display of the flags had begun to devastate the brittle silk fabric and painted designs. The flags were removed by local textile conservators and were repaired and preserved in storage units that protect the relics from light, dust, and excessive handling. Now you know.
Welcome back. Our topic today is the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg, taking place right here in Pennsylvania, and different educational opportunities that will take place to commemorate it. Joining me is James Vaughn of the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission, and they do a lot more, and they're around even when we're not celebrating or commemorating the Civil War. So we were just talking about the State Museum.
Yes.
Now, a lot of times, my most frequent visitors here in the Capitol are fourth graders, because in fourth grade in Pennsylvania, you study Pennsylvania, and many times the children will come up to the Capitol, see the building, and then go over to the State Museum. So what's at the State Museum for them to see? And it's right next to the Capitol, so it's an easy walk.
Well, we get about 60,000 fourth graders every year, mostly in the spring, almost always paired with a trip to the Capitol. So we have both natural history and history of Pennsylvania. Our tagline, if you will, is "We're all about Pennsylvania." So whether you're a fourth grader or your family on a weekend, when you come to the State Museum, you're going to learn a lot about the state, whether it's natural history or history. One of the hard things in a history museum is to stay relevant all the time.
Sure.
So one of the things that we try to do at the State Museum is have a lot of mini exhibits that are either celebrating an anniversary, or they're tied to a news story, or they're somehow related, so that every time you come to the museum you see something a little different.
So if people come this spring or summer, what kind of mini exhibits would they see?
Well, right now they would see the Emancipation Proclamation exhibit with materials from the Pennsylvania newspapers at the time that Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. You might be surprised to know that it was not a very popular pronouncement by Lincoln, and there's probably more in the exhibit that criticizes Lincoln for it than praises him for it.
Well, you're the historian, but it was my understanding that Pennsylvania was a northern state, but not very far north, that there was a lot of division right in the state. What can you say about that?
Well, there was a lot of division within the state, and that's why when you visit this exhibit, you'll see some newspaper cartoons, and you'll see posters that are critical of Lincoln and emancipation, as well as ones supporting him. So I think
Although
it's a little.
a Pennsylvanian, Thaddeus Stevens, was a big abolitionist in Congress at the time.
Yes, yes.
So
we also have some posters from the presidential campaign when McClellan ran against Lincoln. So we also, you may recall, last year at the Olympics, we discovered that the gymnastic uniforms were made in Pennsylvania. So during the course of the Olympics, we had those on display, provided to us by the company in Reading that manufactured them. So we try to look at what's going on in the news and make sure that when you come to the museum, if there's a Pennsylvania thread to that story, that you'll see it there.
All right, talk to me a little bit about the natural history. It seems to me that natural history doesn't change very often. A leaf that was here 150 years ago is probably still around today? Yes? No?
Yes. Well, our most popular exhibit at the State Museum is Mammal Hall, which is a series of dioramas, each done based on a specific location in Pennsylvania with the natural wildlife of that area in the display case.
Do you have bears?
We have bears, we
Elk?
have deer, we have elk, we even have a bison, which, by the way, is not what you think of as a native Pennsylvania animal. But
I would not think of that, but do we have any bison?
we do now, because now they're domesticated and ranched, and so there are some
absolutely
being raised here.
Yes, they're being raised for meat, basically.
We also have extinct species, like we have a number of passenger pigeons, which were made extinct by 1900.
Really? Passenger pigeons that kind of used to carry messages around?
No, they were called passenger pigeons, but they once were very numerous, and they were hunted into extinction.
Wow, I had no idea.
We also have the last cougar that lived in Pennsylvania is in our collection. So we have a lot of animals. We also have I don't know if you remember when you were a kid about pressing plants. Well, scientists do it for a different reason, but we have 15,000 pressed plants that were taken from around the fields and woods of Pennsylvania in the 19th century. And they're now becoming very valuable for us for comparisons when there are questions about species that are threatened.
Yes.
We can go back to our collection and document where they grew in the 19th century and if they're still growing there today.
And if you were a little bit more sophisticated, you could probably compare the DNA or something.
We probably could, yes.
Right? Yeah. So that'll be your next job. Let's talk a little bit more about Civil War activities in case people are specifically interested in that. Where should they look if they want to get your book, The Civil War in Pennsylvania?
Well, the place to look for that is shoppaheritage.com.
Okay.
And they can order it online. And if they're interested in finding out more about Civil War activities, they could look at PACivil-War150.com.
All right, we'll put that on the screen so that people can write that down.
Good.
And if they look at PA Civil War 150, what are they going to see? They're going to see lists and locations around the state?
They will. They'll see the variety of activities that are sponsored by Civil War 150. They'll find links to things that are not officially part of Civil War 150 but are related. So it's a good place to start when you're looking for a weekend's activities related to the Civil War.
All right, now I've got another question for you because I know many Pennsylvanians are interested in their roots and their genealogical background. Can they find any of that kind of information in the archives or the Pennsylvania?
They can. We have a lot of, just this past year, the state released birth and death records, which are a gold mine to genealogists.
Sure.
We are in the process of putting these kinds of materials online so that eventually you'll be able to do much of the research from your home computer. But digitizing millions of records takes time and money. We've entered into an agreement with Ancestry.com, and they are digitizing all of these birth and death records for us. And after they have a 3-year exclusive online, but after that 3-year exclusive, you'll be able to access all of those online.
Good, that's something I intend to do when I retire, so 3 years doesn't bother me. Those are online. I know one night I was stuck here at the Capitol working late, and I was sort of searching your site. There's all kinds of interesting books and articles about religions I guess you would say, around Revolutionary War times in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was a hotbed of new religions and religious activities because of William Penn welcoming everyone. And I was amazed at the things I could already find online. Do you want to talk about anything like that?
There is a lot that's already online. One of the projects that we've completed in the last couple of years is the Civil War muster rolls, which are huge sheets of paper that were not well cared for many years. So we did a complete restoration of all those records.
Now, muster roll will be the guys who are joining up.
Who are joining up, yes.
Okay, the reason that that's good for my county, Montgomery County, is that there were many people mustered right from Norristown, which is our county seat.
Yes.
And so the surrounding farmlands that people came into Norristown marched out from there. So I think that would be something that would be of great interest to my constituents who probably had ancestors.
There's I was briefly retired myself and did some research on my family and discovered that my family came to Pennsylvania in 1698. They were
right with William Penn.
they were Quakers from Plymouth Plantation.
Okay.
And so I discovered that I have about 8 generations in Pennsylvania.
Well, I think these are all fascinating topics, and I know the people who are watching our show are interested both in the Civil War and in the history of Pennsylvania. So we're going to put the websites up so that they can get the information and go online and look for more things. Or they can call my office, and we'll try to patch them in if they're not computer savvy. We have a few people who prefer to do it the old-fashioned way.
Sure.
And that information will be on the screen as well. We have just a minute or so left. Is there anything else you'd like to add people should be looking for or looking at?
Well, I want to invite everybody to think about visiting any of our sites. It's a wonderful experience for people of all ages, I think. If you think about the Railroad Museum in Strasburg or Drake's Well, there's a lot of rich history in Pennsylvania, and we're fortunate that over the years many of the most important places in our history have been saved and are available. And we enjoy working with those collections, but all that we do is for the people of Pennsylvania. So I just want to invite them all to come and learn their history.
Well, I think that's a good wrap up to today's show, and that is all the time we have for today's program. I'm State Representative Kate Harper. If you need assistance with any state government matter, or if you want to find out more about the topics we've been talking about today, feel free to contact me at my local office. The address and phone number will be shown in just a moment. Thanks for watching. Join me again for Legislative Report.